Alright, welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to finish a stamp sketch that was done in a previous video. Everything was just kind of laid down on this composition on a pre-toned slimline card. And I don't know, I think it was probably some demonstration just for, how to apply inks to a surface, kind of in a a graduated tone. In this case, it was going from dark to light to dark again down here. I don't remember what exactly the demonstration was for. It's probably in a previous video. But I think this looks okay just as is, but I mean, it's looking a little anemic right now. One of the things that I'm always kind of pointing out on my videos is the benefit of range. Okay, now in this case, it's a value range. It's kind of a hue range too, in that there's one kind of version of blue here, and I think it can really benefit from having some additional tones. Okay, now these happen to be Marvy inks. They're really good because I can show you through values and through just a stack like this, how you can arrange a tonal or value gradation going from lights to mediums to darks, and this happens to be black right here. You can do the same thing with any types of, any brands of pads, okay? One of the exercises I had people do, I mean, I didn't have them do it a lot, but I had them do like one value range in one of my classes that I used to teach, but I just had them grab all, the pads, be it a sunset scene or something like that, going from light to medium to dark. Okay, it might have been 5 pads, it could have been 3 pads, just depending on what kind of color scheme they wanted to go with. It could be even something like this, okay? But just being able to see those distinct different values really makes it easy for people to understand the addition of colors and different values to a piece to create that tonal range. Okay, so that being said, we're going to keep this really easy here. Now, one of the things that I find when I'm doing these kind of tonal gradations on glossy cardstock with dye-based inks like this, it's kind of good to have a foundation of tones, to build upon. I've stamped out my imagery in black ink on this one. Black dye-based inks. Sometimes people run into kind of media, not incompatibility, but sometimes when they start laying down other tones on top of their black inks on certain types of glossy cardstocks, they find some smearing happening. I do too. If you find that, what you can do is you can stamp out your imagery and you could heat set it and then do that. Now, you still might get a little bit of residue smearing, okay? But if you do that, if you're kind of swiping like this and getting like drag marks, okay, then just change up your methodology in terms of your ink addition and go for more of a tapping motion where you're just going directly down on top of some image as opposed to dragging it across, okay? But I just find that heat setting really helps out. Okay, now, all of this ink is dry. Because I don't remember when I did that. I'm talking about the blues on here. I just stamped out these black tones about a week ago or something like that. But I could have heat set them. So they've been sitting around for a week as well. But all this ink being dry like this, sometimes the biggest thing that people run into is being able to get a smooth addition of tone or ink onto their scenes, okay? And I just told them it's just easier if you have re-inkers like this because you can go for a nice, smooth swatch of tone like that. Now, you won't be able to really see what I'm doing here because the ink that I'm applying right now is lighter than the ink that's already been applied. But what I'm doing with this is I'm just trying to kind of re-moisten the surface a little bit. It might be going down into the pulp of the paper just a touch, but for the most part, I'm just re-moistening the areas on the scene that I've already applied the inks to, okay? Now, when I talk about a tonal range or gradation, what we would be doing with that is we would be laying down tones, but what we'll do is I am starting to drag some of this color right here. When I stamped out my scene, my black imagery, I re-inked my black pad so it was super juicy because I was just going to be doing some stamp sketches, but that black is on there. But that's all right. Okay, but going back to that whole idea of tonal range, as I add these colors like this, okay, I'll use a little bit less pressure. I could still heat set this a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about this because this scene's going to get a lot darker anyway. Okay, this is kind of a nighttime scene with these blues here, these winter blues right here. Maybe where I have a lot of imagery stamped out, I'll tap it like this, okay? But I think what you'll see is it's really not going to matter a lot. Okay, so tonal range. As you work progressively, incrementally through your darker tones, okay, what I will do is I won't go into my scene quite as far as I did with my darker tones, okay, or my lighter tones, okay. I often call these tones that I'm adding down right here base layer colors, okay, because they're underneath the colors that we will eventually see. So I don't know if you can tell, but we're already getting kind of a much richer blue value scale, you know, lights to darkers. But it's also looking richer because, like, this Caribbean blue is a little bit of a warm blue, so we're changing the hue a little bit. This one right here is a much brighter blue, similar to the Bahama blue. I'm just using the Marvy ones. The Marvies are much brighter, but Memento, Distress, you can use them all. They're going to have different characteristics to them. Okay, now let me see if I can add this down. Let me see if you can tell any difference between this and the other colors, okay? Or the other side where I don't have it, okay? Now this isn't too much different from the Caribbean blue, but can you tell that blue vibrancy over there as opposed to right here? It's a lot different from right here to right here, isn't it? I would say, well, not a lot in terms of value, but in terms of brightness, okay? Okay, now, showing you this Marvy pad, okay? Now, it's not true for every single hue that, you know, Marvy inks have, okay? But let's say Marvy inks are not that popular. They used to be, okay? Everyone used to use the 1500 series of pens before ink pads came out, okay? There's a lot of different brands of inks out there, but Marvy's the one that's super, super bright and vibrant, okay? It doesn't mean that's quality, okay? It's just the characteristics of their inks. I do think they're high quality, too. But let's say you have 20 different, you know, pads, maybe not that many, 10 different blue inks from other companies, all different colors, all different types of temperatures of blue, values of blue, okay? Most of them are probably not going to be as bright as like a Marvy pad, but you can layer one color of Marvy into any other combinations. I could put one of these in with all these other mementos, and it will be as bright as the Marvy ones if you want that somewhere. You don't have to have 5 different Marvy pads, all the same brightness. You can mix and match. You can just put one Marvy in. Preferably a brighter one, maybe not the navy blue or something like that, or Prussian blue. But you can add that into the mix, and you can increase the intensity of that entire range. And why is that? It's because dye-based inks are transparent, so if you get one layer of a really bright tone in your combination of inks that you've used, it will brighten up the entire stack, okay? What I mean by stack is just these layers of colors that you're laying in here. So see how bright that is right there? If this is the number 10, that's a really good one to go with. Another one could be a yellow or something like that. You can add a yellow to greens, a yellow to reds, you know, and make oranges for sunsets or something like that. You know, because blue and yellow, they're kind of like the primary colors, so you can add them to different combinations of colors and color mixes. This is a Prussian blue right here. It's one of the darkest blues in the dye-based inks of any line out there. Look how dark that is, okay? It's super dark. So, okay, now going back to what I was saying about my tonal range or value range, okay? Now see this with darker color like this, what I will do is I won't go into my scene quite as far as I did with my lighter colors. The lighter colors really came in here, right? But your darker ones, to get this range of tones, if I go in all the way with my blue, I'm going to be covering up all of my previous colors added, okay? I won't have a range anymore. Now that might look interesting and you'll have a nice rich dark blue, but in order to retain kind of this range of values like that, what you do is you just kind of stop short from where some of your previous colors went. Where you stop, I mean, it's just all up to you. There's no formula like, oh, I stopped right here and I went 1 inch too far. It's not like that, you know. But you just somewhere along the line, you just make it a little bit shorter in terms of, in this case, taps or swipes, okay? But now let's see how this is looking right here. Let's see if this has improved the scene or not, okay? See that right there? I mean, yeah, like I said, I had some gray in there from a little bit of smearing, which I was kind of surprised at, because I would have thought it would have been fixed onto the surface, but there's some inks that are a lot juicier and thicker in viscosity, okay? So they will be prone to doing some of that. So just really heat set it, and, just adjust your tapping. What you do is you tap lightly like this and just kind of lightly swipe, or just do shorter swipes or something like that too. Or you can do something that some people do and just avoid any of that potential smearing. Just use the stays on or something like that. A solvent style ink for your black imagery. A lot of people use that. A lot of people, that's their favorite black. If you live in a place like very arid, like Arizona or something like that, there were these inks called, line of inks, I think it was called Memories inks. Really super dark black, juicy, vibrant. I loved it, okay? But it was often the ink that I used for my last impressions. So I don't have to tone over it, Nothing's going to be touching it. It's just going to be dry, and it's going to be the last thing that I stamp, okay? But I knew someone that used that, and that was their favorite color to stamp all their imagery with. Never smeared, dried perfectly fine. And I found out over the course of, 2 or 3 times I've been out to that area that inks dry super fast. I don't know if it was certain times a year or all the time, but, the inks might have dried not twice as fast, not 3 times as fast, maybe 5 times as fast. I mean, I was stamping with some pigment inks that take a long time to dry, that were drying in a couple hours, that for me it would take, well overnight to dry, just air drying. Okay, but see what's happening right here? We have a nice kind of framing device of a darker tone on the perimeter like that. Look at how it brings that attention to our main character like that. Okay, let's go all the way to black. We might as well. Sometimes going to black like this, see what I'll do is I'll just kind of start that in the corner like that. Okay, so you just kind of do like that. You don't kind of keep going like that. You just kind of stay in the corner, and then you just kind of swipe it in a little bit. Like that, okay. What I'm doing is I'm kind of building up a little bit of puddle on here, okay? Now I can do that because I've laid down all these other inks, so my paper is a little bit super saturated, and I just blend it right in like that. Okay. So the movement's kind of like this. It's not like dot, 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 or tap, tap, tap. It's more tapping, and then you kind of move a little bit. So what you're doing is when you're tapping it like this, ink is coming off of here, and then when it's drier, you kind of move it in a little bit like that, and it makes it really easy to do. You just have to go with the right technique. A lot of people get like this, and they say, oh my god, it's so hard, it's too hard, I got to practice it, so they keep practicing it, and they're going like that. They're doing it really sparse, okay? But what you're doing is you're doing more of a kind of a tapping motion like this. See this right here? And then you're kind of moving it in like that, so you get that nice gradation like that, okay? And let's look at what it looks like right here. Tapping it like that, okay? See that? How it's really kind of building up, and then you're just kind of moving it in. Outside edge in, not so much outside like that, and then outside like that, and like that, and like that, and then you get this really harsh line, but it's just kind of tapping like that. You can move it like this too. You can do it really lightly, firmly. I don't know, you have to just get the feel of it. How wet your paper is depends on, will determine how you can kind of easily swipe. If this is a really dry piece of paper like this, I mean, I can still do it like that, but I have to use less pressure than going like that, okay? All right, so this is kind of coming along pretty well. My paper towel does start to shred after a while, but hey, you can switch up. I like using the same spot right here because it's kind of soaked in right there and getting softer and softer. If it's just shredding all over the place, then yeah, just switch up and there's your new applicator, okay? Somebody said I probably go through a ton of paper towels, but I really don't. This is like a partial, and then I can use like here and over here, That's all I've used right there. Look at that little tiny area of this paper towel. And this is like a piece of a paper towel, but I've only used like that little, those two spots like that. I guess this is folded over like this, okay? So I don't know, whatever your tools, suddenly become, super cheap, in terms of your main tools. And what? You can find that those paper towels or you can find your art supplies at like a 7-Eleven if you needed to. Or if you're at a restaurant, and you get a napkin or something like that. Any napkin should work. Or a kitchen sponge, Yeah, you tap in there like that. Every tool is going to be a little bit different, but, you can pretty much make use of any type of absorbent material like that. Okay, so I stamped out my little pebbles down here, my little rocks, see like that? Okay, here's one fun thing you can do. Here's one of those other things, the benefits of getting kind of a tonal range like this, okay? Now, the different components you can use on here, okay? You can use these same colors like this on objects, okay? Now, I didn't do it on here. I could have stamped, some trees in the background and lighter tones and whatnot within this color scheme, okay? Because when you have kind of a surface like this, that's all blue tones like this, what you're saying is that that's the lighting within a scene. So in this case, it's more like a moonlight. So I stamped those little tiny rocks in, if I can get this to focus in that color, okay? So see how that kind of merges in there? Now let's go to the Prussian blue. Prussian blue, this is still kind of lighter on the interior here. This Prussian blue is very dark, okay? So maybe I'll add this Prussian blue texture in the darker areas like that when this is wet, okay? But now, as you tap, as you stamp something off, you can go on the interior area like that and stamp, lighter impressions of it, okay? Now I was, when I was doing that, those stamp sketches, I was kind of just hurrying through a lot of different compositions, so I didn't really spend a ton of time with this, but let me just develop this a little bit more on this video because we're just focusing only on this one scene. Okay. There that is right there. It's almost too busy though. So what I'm going to do, when you get that, if it gets really kind of too busy, what you do is you just go back in with your, whatever color will darken that up. If this is really light down here, then you go with one of those lighter blues first, okay? So you want to build up into your darker tones, but this is already fairly dark in here, so what you do is we'll just blend things together a little bit more, like this. Okay? There's a little bit of black on here too, so... Okay, and that should do that about like so. All right, so I've just used a little bit more. In this case, Prussian blue. You can go in here with black too. You can, add some black in here like this. It doesn't look black because it's not applying black. It's kind of applying more of a very light gray. Okay, but if you tap it like this and build up that color, you get, a much darker version of whatever color you're applying because you're applying multiple applications of it. Okay, now I'm going to try something here now. I have my black colored pencil. Let me see that if I can add this to glossy cardstock. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. In this case it does. Okay, in my lighter area it looks like I'm applying it over the top, but in some of these darker areas where the ink is still wet, this is kind of lifting some ink off. Okay, what I'm doing right here is I'm just adding a little bit of shadow down at the base of these fence posts like that. You can use things like alcohol markers too. Alcohol markers would be really good for that. Okay, so that is that. See this barn in the background? This isn't a great coloring tool for something like that. So what I have is this. Okay, now I'm just going to add some alcohol marker applications of this. This will make my side of the barn darker. Okay, I like leaving my rooftops lighter. So that it makes the rooftop, it makes it look like, the scene should be. It's being top lit by whatever, moonlight probably, or something like that. Structures. I can think of what I was looking for. Structures are usually, I don't know, in nature they're usually top lit. And, unless there's like a sunset or something like that, you get the light shining on the side of a house or something of that sort. But, okay, I'm just kind of building this up a little bit. Here's a little bit of gray, adding it under the eaves, adding on the side. See, if I do the side of it a different value too, it looks more three-dimensional because each side of the barn has a different value. Light, darker, darkest, okay? See this horse right here? This horse, let's make it cast a shadow underneath here, okay? So putting tone down like that. But it would probably be more bluish because we have blue tones in here, so I put that gray down there, and I'll blend that out with a little bit of a medium. Here's a very light blue, okay? And just kind of blend it out, okay? This isn't like Yupo paper where it'll blend out a lot easier, but while it's still wet, you can kind of manipulate it like that, with no problem. All right. All right. Fun with pens. That is kind of fun. Here, let me see. Let me take some of this and add it down onto the base of the fence posts. That, okay. All right. Now, let's have some textural fun in here. When I was looking at this earlier, I thought, okay, this is a good candidate for some potential snowfall. I see it as something like representative of, like the first snow of the year or something like that. Like a light dusting of snowfall. Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White, old toothbrush. Okay. I added some water into this a while back. I added a little bit too much. Usually I have to add a little bit of water to this each time, but yeah, this is still pretty wet in there. What you want is the consistency of like a thick syrup, okay? I just want to dip kind of the tip of it in like that. And a little bit more, okay? And then you kind of squeegee, or I don't know, squeeze some of it on, not squeegee it off, but... Okay, so I just have it right in the tip right here. Don't fill up the whole thing. That would be just way too much unless you're doing like a, I don't know, 40 by 60 inch, scene, which I doubt you're doing. But take that and about, I don't know, 6-7 inches away. Start flicking, kind of be aware of the direction that, your splatter's going. Sometimes it goes over here, sometimes it goes over here. I've done it quite a few times, but sometimes I still don't know kind of the direction that it's going to be splattering on. With most things stamping, I don't believe you can overdo things. This, I have overdone it a few times, okay? The fun thing about this, though, too, is Bleed Proof White is has a really chalky consistency, and it dries really fast, okay? If you add too much, like, I got a couple of really big drops over here, okay? I like variation, but maybe that's a little bit too much in that one area like that. So I can just take this like this. I can take it right off. Or if you just have too much of a dusting of it everywhere, like in some area, you just take this like this. Or a paper towel or whatever. And you just rub it right off. It doesn't affect anything. It's not kind of bleaching out anything. You're not going to remove a dot and it looks like it bleached out, the background or something like that. It's because when it hit it, it practically dried instantly. Bleed Proof White, even the smallest of tiny little dots is very opaque, right? I mean, we're talking about fractions of a millimeter right in there, okay? But it still reads very nicely. If I just did it only up here, okay, if I kind of masked off this whole bottom portion down here and only up there, it would look like stars. If you do it over the whole thing, it's kind of like snow. Okay, let's go in and add some finishing little touches. Yeah, this looks like a good place for kind of a focal point in the sky, maybe like a North Star too. Maybe I'll do that. If I did that, I would have done that before I did the splatter painting typically. But I could still add it in. Okay, so let's bring in some little highlights onto my fence right here. Okay. We have lighting in the scene. We have scenic lighting, right? There's a lot of light in the scene. So I'm just adding some additional lighting, highlights in this case, over my objects here. Fence posts are a perfect spot for that. There's such a strong character in the scene, and you can really make them look very dimensional with some additional highlights. I've built in lighting into the the posts and everything like that. Okay, so you can just add some additional lighting back into it because we've colored it. Now see that lighting is coming from here, so on the right side of these posts I will put some additional highlights. The lighting is coming from the left of these ones, so I will put it on the left of these posts, okay? So you can just put a couple dots, and see if you like it. If If you like it, you can add more. Don't overdo it too much, but if you overdo it, just rub it right off. It'll come right off. Okay, and let's see. Let's put some little highlights on our... I don't want to do too much here, so... it's already kind of texturally pretty busy. So, adding some into my meadow like that. See that right in there? Okay. But this character right here looks like they're looking off to the distance. Let's put kind of a little North Star type of thing going on right here. Okay? I'm going to do it right there. So it looks like the character is looking at it. Okay, now here's my little detail with these stars. This is a very long piece like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the star, the horizontal points, much longer, okay, to reiterate the format. All right. I didn't get a real smooth kind of application there, but you can just kind of, it's like a golfer doing practice swings. You can just kind of keep going like this, and you can take it. These are the longest kind of arms too. Now, if you don't like it, then just wipe it right off and practice again, okay? So those are my arms right there, okay? And then find the center of it again. And I'll go like that. I have better luck doing a downstroke, okay? So I always turn it in the direction of that downstroke. In other words, I'm not going to keep it all this way and try to go like that and that, okay? Our hands naturally go like this, right? This isn't like a natural motion, but see, this is right here. Okay, so you just kind of adjust according. Okay, now those are my crosshairs right there, and then these secondary ones, you go a shorter stroke. Okay, so I kind of get it like this with my paint. I get a little dot there flowing, and I just go like that. So I'm putting a little dot of paint down there like that. Okay, and I just kind of drag it out like that. All right, but then we have our focal point star. Look at that right there. It's kind of funny that it's a fairly small element in the scene, but it really stands out, doesn't it? Now you can take the time. You can put like a couple crystals up here or something like that. I think that would look really nice. But I think I'm just going to leave it as my star, as being kind of the focal point of the scene. And just leave it at that. And the writer's kind of a focal point too, but, well, definitely, but things are kind of busy in here anyway, so I don't think we need some crystals. If I was giving this to like a kid or something like that, I'd definitely put little crystals in here and make it as blingy as possible. It's kind of for me too. I love that bling too, but I don't think I'm going to add it down here. Okay, this is some white pigment ink. Look at what this does here too. This kind of reiterates lighting. Okay, what you do is you add it in the lighter areas, and then you move up into your darker areas or elements. So in this case, I'm going right up the horse's legs, okay? Not all the way up, because we're saying this is kind of a low-lying fog in here, okay? I love that, though. I can go into some of these darker areas, but I'm a little bit more careful, like I might do lighter applications of it. Lighter application is kind of like a drier application, just so it becomes a little bit more translucent and doesn't stand out quite so much. But look at that kind of look of it right in there. Doesn't that look pretty good? It changes the feel of that area by putting that soft lighting in there. Ooh, now see, that's a lot right there, right? But you don't panic. I just switch to a clean area of my cotton ball, and I'm just removing it, okay? That's the beauty of things. You can always adjust, okay? I don't do kind of these big, huge, sweeping moves that are just kind of impossible to, correct from if something goes kind of awry. If I'm stamping this, figure here and I double stamp it on accident, that's hard to, adjust from. I guess I could plant like a big tree over this entire front thing or something like that, put a whole row of trees, but just in general, as far as the media techniques go and the applications of them, I take it, the lighter colors first, and I build up into the darker colors. And it's not like some big, huge calligraphic swatch. I'm just kind of building up my colors really gradually. Okay, now in the background here, do you see that barn? I think it looks pretty cool like that, but you see here's this little bit of light right here. So it affords me the ability to go back in and kind of add a little bit of kind of a cloudy mist in the distance like that if we want to. Okay. That. All right. It looks like that barn has something to do with the fence, and has something to do with the writer. So things in the distance, are kind of related to things in the, the things that are close. Let's go up a little bit more with this horse right here, I'm adding variation to the horse here. I think my pad here is getting really super dry, but I think there's a couple juicy spots on there, so I need to be careful that I'm not, applying too much. Yeah, I can wipe it off, but I'd rather just not apply so much to begin with. Okay. Trees in the background. Add a little bit of tone onto them. See how light they look now? Don't they look like they're in the distance? Tree back in the distance there. Let's knock it back even more so visually, okay? Just making it lighter, but also kind of in a veil of mist, right? Doesn't that push that tree back quite a ways from a visual standpoint? See that right back there? Here. It's kind of fun to be able to manipulate your impressions after you've already stamped them, okay? You can't do that too many times. I mean, you can color them and things like that, and change the color, but this is a way to go and change the texture of it. Where I apply this over it, it definitely looks like soft light, right? So you get that textural range of very soft and very crisp when you apply it to certain areas of it. I don't like applying it to the whole area or the whole object, but parts of it, okay? So that the impressions themselves become, or have a lot of range in them, in themselves. They're not just a single, mono texture object or monotone, mono value, okay? You really kind of change the spirit of it like that. Look at those fences. Don't they look totally different? Or I don't know, not totally different, that's the wrong thing, but kind of expanded, you know. I don't know, so there was a little before and after with our piece there. And there is our, you know, I always go back to my the same titles I've always done. I get boring with those probably, I'm sure, but I always call this like Midnight Rider. I always think it's kind of a romantic notion, kind of going out and doing things at nighttime, you know, in the outdoors and whatnot. If it's warm enough, I always liked night hikes, you know. I always thought it was kind of, it's just a different kind of feel doing that, but yeah, this kind of notion of going out on the whatever, the ranch here with the horse and whatnot. For a textural range, let's take a look at that splatter painting. You can do that with a white paint pen too if you don't have it. You know, it takes a lot longer. You know, you're adding little dots one at a time. It doesn't take too long though. Fence, look at that bleed in there with the highlights like that. And on this side, we have our focal point. We have our multi-tonal rocks down here. See how rich they are in terms of value and color. They're black, gray, dark blue, light blue. All right. And I think that scene is complete. So another stamp sketch finished off right here. And this is a 4 1/4 by 11. I should never work this big, you know, at 11 inches. I should, I don't know, cut off the sides there a little bit so I can mount it on a, you know, on another card or whatnot, but or another piece of paper. But anyways, finished off. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. And thanks as always for tuning in to the Stampscapes channel.